But the soul sleep doctrine is what outsiders call it. They themselves would refer to it as conditional immortality.
So we're talking about, for the unsaved, a double annihilation.
Double annihilation.
One is temporary,
one is permanent, yeah. With the Millerite movement, which was basically an end times prophecy cult that got really big in the 1800s.
Hello, everybody. I want to welcome you to another edition of the Uncensored Pilgrims. I'm Marty McLain, along with the irrepressible
Paul Price.
And we are here once again from the basement.
From the basement bunker.
The bunker basement. And we're going to be talking about, Paul, what's our topic today?
Well, last week we went far left.
Okay.
And we talked about the so-called progressive Christianity. Today, I think we're about as far to the opposite of that spectrum as you could possibly get, which is the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
Yes.
So, I mean, I'd say they're about as far to the right, and not in all good ways. So, the pretty much exact opposite of the spectrum as compared to what we talked about last week.
Yes, we are going to talk about the Seventh-day Adventists. There's a lot of Seventh-day Adventists up around Chattanooga. I think
there's
North Georgia.
Well, I know there's like
Chattanooga.
Isn't it like either the regional or
I
think it's a regional headquarters up on I-75.
It's right on the interstate.
Right off of I-75. You can't miss it. It's
yeah.
this noticeable, old-fashioned looking like plantation style building.
It's an older building. It kind of almost looks like one of the state rest places where you're on the interstate and you get to go in there.
Yeah, like a rest stop. Yeah,
rest stop. Yeah.
You know, and I will say too, as a shout out, this topic was specifically requested by a very big fan of ours. Apparently, a good listener by the name of Damon, who goes to our church.
Yes.
So shout out to Damon for listening to maybe more of our podcast than is healthy.
Yeah, it could. You might have a point there. Yeah, so Paul does read the emails.
Yes.
And he does respond. And sometimes, I like to see his response to some of the emails, especially on our YouTube channel, because Paul is not only irrepressible, he is a little bit salty.
And
saucy.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm well seasoned.
Yes, he is well seasoned, and he gives some well seasoned responses to some people. And
doesn't the Bible say to season your speech with a grain of salt or two?
Yeah, you've got like a whole shaker full,
man.
Okay. I mean, you're very salty sometimes. But we're going to talk about the Seventh-day Adventists, and one particular doctrine kind of stood out in that email that needed to be addressed. And Paul, why don't you kind of launch us out on that?
Okay, so with the Seventh-day Adventists, there's a whole string of different doctrines that they have that are in error. But one of the ones that was specifically mentioned by our listener is soul sleep. Yeah. And some people may not be aware of what that doctrine is, but basically it's one of a number of shared doctrines that SDAs or Seventh-day Adventists have alongside other offshoots of the Adventist movement that ultimately goes back to the 1800s with the Millerites.
Yeah.
But I believe the Jehovah's Witnesses are another example of a group that have that same
Very
teaching.
similar, yeah.
And they got it from the same place because they're offshoots of this Millerite movement.
Yes.
But the soul sleep doctrine is what outsiders call it. They themselves would refer to it as conditional immortality.
Conditional immortality.
Which, if you break that down, it means that you do get to live forever, but only if you meet a condition. Otherwise, you don't get to live forever, which is essentially the doctrine that the wicked or the unsaved will not endure eternal torment. They will be
thrown into the lake of fire and annihilated.
They will be annihilated. So it goes hand in hand with a doctrine known as annihilationism.
Yes.
So it goes hand in hand with that. But it goes a little further than that because it is the rejection of the word soul sleep is a misleading term because they don't believe that you have a soul and it goes to sleep when you die. That's not really what they believe.
They believe everything goes to sleep.
They believe that you don't have a soul at all. They reject the notion of the human soul.
It's all in there together.
Yeah, so they would actually, very bizarrely, they would agree with the atheist materialist. The atheist materialist says that your body is all you are. Mm-hmm. There is no supernatural, spiritual soul component of a human. That's what atheist materialists believe. Mm-hmm. But bizarrely, the Adventist movement adopted that same view with respect to humans, which is really odd, and it doesn't fit with a biblical worldview at all.
A soul would never leave the body.
They don't believe in the soul. So what they believe is that the Greek word soul is, or spirit, they try to claim, out of context I might add, that the only meaning that really has is breath. So they would argue that it's just like an essence or your breath, but it doesn't survive your physical death. Mm-hmm. It's just part of your body. Mm-hmm. You are your body.
So when a believer dies, when anybody dies, they just go to the ground and they have an unconsciousness.
They are annihilated. Annihilation happens right there.
I'm sorry. I'm talking about the righteous and as
all
well
of them. Everybody is annihilated. This is one of the problems.
Really?
Yeah, because they don't believe you have a soul. So what happens when you die? You are annihilated.
I thought that would just be that they would sleep. The body would be deteriorating, but then it would be resurrected, and that would.
Well, they do believe in that. They believe in resurrection only for the saved.
Right.
But what does that resurrection mean? It means God is recreating you from scratch.
They don't believe it's from the body that's in the grave?
I don't think so, because, not everybody has a grave.
Somebody going to fact check this, man.
They don't believe that any part of you survives your death.
Okay.
They believe that you are gone.
It's
over, and then at the resurrection, God will recreate you.
Okay.
If you're saved.
But if not, you're going to be whatever's left or thrown to the lake of fire
and
annihilated.
I guess technically they would believe at the second resurrection, everyone will be recreated, but only momentarily. The people who aren't saved
recreated, and then
they'll just the only reason they're getting recreated is to get judged and thrown into the lake of fire, destroyed again.
Okay, so their whole concept of soul is different. So there'd be no immortality of the soul because
they don't believe in the soul.
Okay, and it would be annihilated.
It would be annihilated
if there was one.
Everyone is going to be annihilated when they die. And then on the second resurrection, everyone is going to get recreated just for the purpose of being judged.
The second resurrection would be the resurrection for the wicked.
Right.
Prior to the great white throne.
Yeah, so the first resurrection is something that we would agree with, right? Yeah. The first resurrection is for the saved.
Right.
And they reign with Christ for 1,000 years.
Blessed is one who has part in the
first resurrection. But now the second resurrection would be for those who didn't get the first one, which is the unsaved or wicked.
And they'll be judged according to the
They're going to be judged.
Works.
Yeah. But then, guess what? According to the SDAs, they would be annihilated a second time. So, but either way, so everyone's going to get annihilated once if you die, unless you happen to be here when the Lord returns. Everyone's going to get annihilated once.
But you won't know you're annihilated if you're saved, because it's an unconscious existence. But then all of a sudden it's like a blink of an eye, and then you're.
I don't think they would make any distinction between the saved and the unsaved in that regard. Okay. I think for them, death is death.
So we're talking about for the unsaved a double annihilation.
Double annihilation.
One is temporary, one's eternal.
One is permanent. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And here's the weird part of this, though. When you start to think about this, it creates a lot of philosophical problems.
Okay.
On top of the myriad of theological problems it creates, it also creates major philosophical problems too. Because think about this. Now, obviously, I don't believe God would ever do this.
Okay.
But think about God's power. Now, do you think it would be possible for God to create a copy, a body double, but also a mind double of Marty McLain? Do you think God, if he wanted to, he could make another person from scratch right now that looks just like you and has all of your memories.
Oh, yes.
Is that not possible?
Yes.
Now, would that person be you?
I would say no, because I'd still be here. You're going to now all of a sudden you're going to start talking about the multiverse, and then we're going to be in the time travel.
I'm not going there.
Okay.
I'm not going there. I'm talking about the resurrection right now.
Okay.
So if God made a man that looks just like you and has all your memories,
Okay.
you would know that that's not you, right? Even though it looks like you and he has all your memories.
I would know.
You would know.
I'd be looking at him and I'd be saying, that's not me.
You would know it wasn't you.
I would know it's not me.
Well, that's a problem for their resurrection, isn't it? Because if you're going to be annihilated and then God is going to recreate another guy.
Is that really you?
Is that really you? Because there's no continuity there.
Or is it all the sleight
like,
of hand?
You're gone. Here.
Yeah.
Gone. Now, at the resurrection, another guy appears that looks like you and has your memories, but there was nothing in common. There was nothing that stayed that whole time. You see what I'm saying?
So you can't say that they were. You can't say that they were. That he recreates, or not that he recreates, but that he resurrects, like the remnants of that person. You're what they say is that he's going to create something totally different.
Well, it's a problem with their view because they're going to try to do some wordplay to claim that it's not totally different. But if there's nothing that survives between the first version and the second version, then how can you claim that it's the same person? It doesn't really make sense. It's incoherent. Because, it's just like anything else. If you destroy it and then you make a copy of it, it's still just a replica, right?
Because the original's
there. Gone.
Well, if the original's there and then you can recreate something, but the original's still there, then that's just a recreation, not from the original.
I don't think it really matters if you want to try to split hairs and say, well, God is going to reuse all of the atoms and molecules from your body. Well, first of all, that's a problem too because we reuse I forget what the statistic is. It might be every 7 years. Like your body's always shedding cells, right?
Yes.
And regrowing cells. So after about 7 years, I think it is, you have totally regenerated all the cells in your body. And there's nothing, your body is completely made up of all different cells every 7 years, I think they say.
Really?
Yeah.
So you're totally different, you're a totally different person every...
Well, no, because I do believe in the soul.
Yes.
So I don't believe we are our bodies. But if you do think that, then you have a problem because, okay, which atoms and molecules is God going to pick? Is he going to pick the ones that you shed, in when you were 20? Or, it starts to get crazy. And then another part is the whole aspect of free will. How can you make a choice if all you are is atoms and molecules? Yeah. Atoms and molecules don't make choices. Just like rocks and trees and water, they don't make choices. A bowling ball doesn't make a choice. It all just follows the laws of physics.
Okay.
So this is a problem that I would normally set in front of an atheist. Like when they want to say, oh, well, I can be good without God. I don't need God to tell me to be good. I'll just be good. And I'll say, well, wait, do you believe you have a soul? Because normally they don't. In which case I would ask, how do you think you're making moral choices then? All you are is a body, and that body is nothing but a collection of matter, atoms and molecules, following the laws of physics. There's no room in there to make a choice. Whatever's happening in your brain, however complicated it might be, it's physical, so it's following the laws of physics. There's no room for a choice there. So I think the Seventh-day Adventists would run onto that very same problem because they're denying that we have a spiritual, non-physical soul. So those are the philosophical problems, right off the bat. Without even talking about what the Bible says about it, you can see major issues with that doctrine just from thinking logically. It doesn't make sense. If you don't survive your death at all, then when God, quote unquote, resurrects you, he's really just copying you, and some other guy gets to enjoy the benefits of your, to them, good works,
Yeah.
here on this earth, some other guy's going to get to enjoy those benefits.
Well, all right.
That's not really fair because he wasn't there. He didn't do that
No, he
stuff.
didn't go through all the stuff you went through.
Yeah.
But yeah, he gets to have.
But he gets to enjoy the benefits of something somebody else did. Isn't that weird?
That you've kind of made it where it almost looks like that you die and you're done, but yet there's going to be someone that's similar to you that's going to be pulled up, created.
Basically just created out of scratch, from thin air.
Okay.
Or even if, it doesn't really matter if you're created from thin air or if God reuses atoms and molecules that exist. It doesn't matter either way. It's a person that didn't exist before.
Right.
And so that's not you. Sorry, that's not you. That's a copy.
Yes.
God's going to copy you one day. That's their gospel, basically. If you do the right stuff, then you can get copied one day after you die. But you won't be here, but a copy of you will be. It doesn't make sense.
That is crazy.
Yeah. I'm not saying that they would use those exact terms themselves, but that is what their doctrine of conditional immortality ends up boiling down to, because they deny the supernatural soul. And so that's very problematic in so many different ways. You want to talk about the biblical ways that it's a problem, or how you want to go from there, Marty?
Well, let's start with the biblical ways.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure you've got some verses in mind. I know I've got, some verses in mind that pertain to this. The Bible, talks about souls all the way throughout. So why... It's very bizarre to me, and I don't know if anyone has written on this to explain where this, like, who's the first guy that decided they knew better than all the Christians before them. I know it looks like, and I hadn't learned this until recently, but apparently Luther had this weird view of although he didn't deny the existence of the soul, did he? But anyway, it's weird how it goes back, but.
You have verses like 2 Corinthians 5:8, to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord.
Yes.
And you have Philippians 1:21 through 24 where Paul says, I want to depart and be with Christ, or it's more profitable for you that I'm here, but for me, it's more I want to depart and be with Christ.
Yeah.
And so there's an awareness that you're in the presence of the Lord, even if you go to the book of Revelation. There's a part in the book of Revelation where the souls are under, I think it's Revelation 6:9. They're under the altar and they're demanding justice.
Yeah. So they're not annihilated. They exist still, out of the body.
And they have a conscious awareness.
Yeah, there's so many. It's hard to know where to even go because there's so many places all throughout the Bible where people are depicted as existing apart from their body. I mean, it's obvious.
Yeah.
Like Paul is another... Paul talks about it quite a bit in his letters. Like you said, he talks about to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord.
Right.
That doesn't fit with their doctrine.
No.
To say that Paul says that he would prefer to depart his body, be with the Lord, that would be far better, but he stays for their benefit.
Yeah.
Well, if he's going to just cease to exist when he dies, that's not far better.
Yeah, it's like in those movies where you get into that capsule and you're in a spaceship and you have to go into hypersleep.
Yeah.
Unless on those bad movies where the container gets cracked and you turn into an old person by the time you get to Mars. I think that happened on Planet of the Apes, isn't it? One of the old ones.
Okay.
Where Charlton Heston, get your hands off me, you dirty apes. And
I don't think that's what he said, actually.
There's an expletive in there, but
you must have been watching the VidAngel version.
This is the edited version. This is the censored version.
Yeah. So, it's all throughout the Bible, but especially in Paul's writings, Paul makes it really, really undeniably clear. He also says that there was a moment in time when, and he's kind of being modest, so he says he knows a man, but I think most commentators agree
to the third heaven. Yeah.
He was talking about himself there, but he was trying to be modest. Right. But he knows a man who was caught up to the third heaven, and he says whether it was in the body or out of the body, he isn't sure.
Yeah.
Now, what does that mean? If this soul sleep or conditional immortality doctrine is true, how can Paul say that he isn't sure if this was in or out of the body.
No.
That doesn't make sense at all.
Right.
If you can't leave your body, if you are your body, then it makes no sense to say whether I was in or out of the body, or whether he was in or out of the body. It doesn't, I'm not sure. Like, that doesn't make sense. So there are so many verses in the Bible that flatly contradict this doctrine that it should be pretty easy as a Christian, as a Bible believer who reads their Bible. It shouldn't be a tough call here to see that that's a wrong doctrine.
Now, if you did believe in soul sleep, imagine you're about to die and you think, I'm about to go to sleep for I don't know how long.
It wouldn't be a very hopeful thing
to think
about. Have you ever had surgery? Yes.
You know, there's been several times. I mean, I broke my leg, had some other stuff, a torn ACL, I had to have surgery and stuff. And you know, I think several, at least a couple of times after I've had surgery, I remember waking up but didn't know I just woke up. But I remember asking, when are they going to do the surgery?
Yeah.
And they said, well, they've already done the surgery.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I had no concept.
No awareness of the passing.
So that would be
of time.
comforting words that maybe if I was a Seventh-day Adventist pastor, I might would speak.
You could put it that way. You could say, don't worry, you won't even notice it.
Yeah, and some of the verses that they take, obviously, when Jesus says she's not dead, but she's sleeping.
Yeah,
like a little girl.
But that's just a euphemism.
And also
they take it literally, but it's a euphemism.
It's a euphemism, and
but technically they wouldn't even if you take it literally, it doesn't work.
And I think they grammatically changed the words that he spoke to the thief on the cross about the day you'll be with me in paradise.
Yeah, they like add a comma or something like that, don't they?
So I would like to be able to add commas sometimes.
Yeah, it'd be nice if you could just change the Bible to say whatever you want.
Yeah, I mean,
but
you can't always do that.
I mean, that's exactly what the Jehovah's Witnesses took the liberty of doing.
They got their own translation, man.
Now, let me be clear. I believe the Seventh-day Adventists are every bit as much of a heretical cult as the Jehovah's Witnesses.
Are you serious, man?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Oh, you would go that far?
I would go exactly that far.
Seriously?
Yes.
See, I wouldn't go that far.
Well, once you compromise the gospel, we're going to get into that. To me, it doesn't matter whether you compromise the gospel on one point or many points. Any compromise of the gospel is a different gospel, and that is a false gospel.
Have you ever bought a Little Debbie snack cake?
To be honest, I have eaten them before.
TBH?
TBH. I have eaten them before, but I can't.
Trying to keep it rizzy.
I cannot say for sure that I've ever eaten. I mean, that I've ever bought one. I have eaten them, but not sure if I've ever spent my money on one. I could be wrong.
They're Seventh-day Adventists.
Oh yeah, I remember hearing that. They're Seventh-day Adventists.
But I don't know if that sticks to the dietary restrictions of a Seventh-day Adventist to have snacks.
Why don't you fill us in? Because I'm not aware of their dietary. Are they vegetarian only, or what is their dietary?
I think that they can be. I don't want to say I think pescatarians. I think that they avoid. I think they avoid some of the bad meat. I say bad meat. I don't think bacon's not bad.
I like bacon.
But let's see. They have here's from an article from Christianity.com. 10 things everyone, including Paul Price, should know about Seventh-day Adventists and their beliefs.
They even put my name in the title.
A lot of things on the internet has your name on it.
Wow.
That's
a little crazy.
It says, quote, many Seventh-day Adventists subscribe to a vegetarian or plant-based diet. They take this direction from Scripture, which says God gave nuts, grains, and herbs as nourishment. Because of this diet, many experts have said Seventh-day Adventists can live an average of 10 years longer than most Americans. So they have 10 years more before they
cease to exist.
In a study from Loma Linda University, scientists found that Adventists can die of cancer, stroke, or heart disease, but the age at which diseases and illnesses are diagnosed is much later because of their healthy lifestyle and resting on the Sabbath.
Or is it because they don't go to the doctor as often?
I don't know. Could be. In addition to a plant-based diet, many churches also forbid alcohol and tobacco. The doctrine reads, quote, such health is a gift from a loving God who wants us to live life in its abundance, unquote.
Yep. So you can detect, even in that, a very strong streak of legalism going through.
Yeah.
And that is why I declare them a cult and a false gospel as I do, because that that legalism isn't just restrained to matters of food and drink. By the way, if you're going to go to the scripture about eating only vegetables, why not go to the part where Paul specifically says that, he calls a person who believes that the quote-unquote weaker brother.
Mm-hmm. Or go to Acts 10 and Peter seeing the sheet let down from heaven with all unclean animals. Rise, Peter, kill and eat.
Yeah, kill and eat.
I mean, he was able to go to Cornelius the Gentile after that and, break some bread with him.
But Paul specifically talks about the issue of eating only vegetables, and he doesn't forbid it, but he does say it's the weaker brother who believes that. Yeah. So apparently being weaker is what the Seventh-day Adventists are aspiring to here. I don't know.
You got strong brothers eating bacon.
Yeah, so I don't know. But the legalism gets worse the further you look into their doctrines.
Okay.
So
I noticed that time we had somebody from Seventh-day Adventist background email us one time.
Yeah.
I think it took one email from you and it pretty well shut him down.
My email was salty, as you said.
It was very salty, man. Well, I mean, if that was raw meat, it would be preserved for 25 years. I mean, you could take it into the bunker with you.
Well, it wasn't anything personal against that guy. I just simply don't feel like we want to associate our podcast as if we are condoning that group is all. Okay. That's all. Because we can't. That has been the mistake. That does not include
Little Debbie's side.
That has been the mistake of Christianity for decades, going back to Walter Martin and the Kingdom of the Cults, which is a really good book and a really good, strong resource. And even dealing with Seventh-day Adventists, he does a good job. But
there's going to be a conjunction.
He made a wrong call, and he believed. He decided after studying their views, and I think he was more honing in on the deity of Christ aspect and comparing them to the Jehovah's Witnesses, where the Jehovah's Witnesses deny the deity of Christ, but the Seventh-day Adventists accept the deity of Christ. Right. And I think that swayed Walter Martin over to the side of saying that they were an aberrant group, but they weren't a non-Christian cult.
See, I would tend to be more in line with Walter Martin.
Well, let's get into the investigative judgment.
Tell me where I'm.
And then we'll see if you still are going there.
We're going back to 1844.
So, okay, here's where the Seventh-day Adventists got their start with the Millerite movement, which was basically an end times prophecy cult that got really big in the 1800s, and they were naming dates, and that's always a dangerous business, isn't it?
Yeah.
And they were naming dates, and the first one they named came and went, and it didn't fulfill.
It's always disappointing when that happens.
Well, it wasn't the great disappointment, though.
Oh.
The great disappointment was when they said, no, here's the real date, and they named a second date.
Okay.
But guess what? That one came and went, and that's what they call the great disappointment. Because I'm sure a lot of them had sold their houses and quit their jobs and done all sorts of crazy stuff because they were convinced that Jesus was coming back on 1844. I don't remember the date, but in 1844.
October 22nd.
Okay, and there you go. And guess what? It didn't happen again.
Yes.
And these guys, some of them, just did not know when to quit. And this gentleman who was part of this movement or part of this end times Millerite cult, his name was Hiram. Let's see, what was it now? Hiram Edson was his name. And he claimed to have had a heavenly vision while in a field.
Okay.
And his heavenly vision told him that it turns out that this great disappointment wasn't wrong after all, but they just had the wrong idea about what type of thing was going to happen. So they thought it was the second coming, but according to this vision that Hiram Edson had, it was not. It was just the beginning of a new phase of Jesus' atonement. Mm-hmm. So Jesus' atonement wasn't complete. And it still isn't. It won't be complete until he finishes with what Hiram called the investigative judgment. And what supposedly happened in 1844 is that Jesus entered into a new compartment of heaven that he wasn't in before, and he started a new atonement work that he hadn't started before. And this
got a new job.
He got a new job. He entered into the final phase of his atonement.
Okay.
And here's what it is. Are you ready for this?
Yes.
He starts just like Santa Claus, going down the list of who's naughty and nice. That's what he's doing up there.
So it's taking him this long?
He's still not done with it. And he's going line by line. He's looking at everybody's life, and he's discovering, have they lived up to the standard or not?
And they can, and Seventh-day Adventists, according to them, can lose their salvation. And one of the ways you can lose your salvation is by getting careless on the Sabbath.
Well, yeah. But it's not just, I mean, it's any of the commandments, though.
Right.
But they like to focus on that one.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not just about the Sabbath. It's about all of God's law. Are you living up to it or not? And that's what he's investigating. And he's investigating your whole life, and he's going line by line for everybody who's ever lived.
Mm-hmm.
So in 1844, he started back at the beginning of creation, and he started going line by line on everybody's life.
It's a big investigation.
Once he gets to your name, you're done.
So I'm the M's.
So the question is, has he got to you or not?
I'm halfway.
We're not sure.
I would. You'd think so.
You can never be sure if he's got to you or not. But if he's already got to you, he's not coming back.
So how many names can he do in a minute?
Well, it must not be very many because he started in 1844. He hasn't finished yet.
Oh my goodness.
But that's the investigative judgment. He's revealing.
What was that guy doing in the corn patch?
Well, now that's a different question. He might have been eating some of Charles Taze Russell's Miracle Wheat. I don't know. The founder of the Jehovah's Witnesses who came up with that scam product called Miracle Wheat.
Yeah, but
he was eating a little too much Miracle Wheat. I don't know. But the point is, this is his doctrine. This investigative judgment is that in 1844, Jesus entered into a new compartment of heaven, and he started going line by line and judging everybody based on works of the law. And it is the results of that investigation, not your faith in Christ, that determine your salvation. Yeah. Now that's what I would call a false gospel, a gospel of works-based salvation. And the thing that makes it hard with them is that on the one hand, they can say two things that completely contradict and have no problem with it. So
I've heard where they've been. I was listening to a guy that he was talking about how he was even working with some of the higher ups. He was one of the big teachers there in the Seventh-day Adventist denomination, and he said that he knew from the Daniel passage that you just could not make the Daniel passage be talking about this investigative judgment. Mm-hmm. It did not pertain to Ellen White. And so, in the
and we haven't even gotten to Ellen White yet, by the way.
And the higher ups knew that he was right, and they said, "Well, just it is what it is. We can't do anything about it."
Yeah. And so it's a human organization, and it's always a bad thing when you got a human organization coming up with doctrines. That's supposed to be from God alone. That's supposed to be from Scripture. Yeah. But what happened was you had this Hiram guy, had this vision, investigative judgment, and then you had Ellen G. White, who was
what does G stand for?
I do not know, actually.
Going to give you a prophecy.
Gonna give you a prophecy.
Yes.
But she was famous for not claiming to be a prophetess. She claimed to be, I think, God's messenger, which is, if you get down to it, it's the same.
You got me on that one.
It's the same thing.
You got me.
But the point is, she's giving out these prophecies, and she comes up and says, this Hiram Edson guy, he's right on the money. I'm confirming what he said. So she confirmed what he said, and then she continued to give out a lot of other doctrines besides that one, and a lot of other prophecies, to the point where Seventh-day Adventists, in the words of our listener who wrote in, sometimes cannot remember the difference between her words and the Bible because they study them both so much.
I think I was listening to one guy talk about, when you go look to where she gets some of her stuff, it may have been lifted from somewhere else.
It may have. I don't know. I haven't really studied a whole lot into Ellen G. White, but one guy I recommend on YouTube, if you're looking for other places to go on YouTube for good stuff, another guy I recommend is Tim Martin. I have no idea if there's a relation to Walter Martin or not. But either way, he does good counter cult stuff on YouTube. Tim Martin, and I listened to his whole presentation on the Seventh Day Adventists. But
by the way, we're doing this on a Saturday, so they're actually
at church right now.
Yes,
huh? Yeah,
or they have been earlier.
So
today.
This legalism that they've got is a major issue. To me, legalism is not just a little deal; it's a major deal.
Yeah, and once again, with the Sabbath, I don't know, we mentioned it earlier, but they believe that when the Antichrist comes, he will. The mark of the beast will be that the Antichrist will make everybody worship on Sunday.
Yeah. So for them,
Sunday worship is the sign of the Antichrist.
Yeah. So for them, we Christians are already living under the mark of the beast. We just don't know it.
So
yet.
Tomorrow when we go to church,
we'll be at the mark of the beast because so they have all these crazy doctrines.
And here's one of the things, because sometimes when you have to talk about Seventh-day Adventists or you talk about somebody else, one of these cults or aberrant groups, you kind of think, well, you don't want to be too harsh in some ways, but yet you want to speak truth in the way, when you talk about them. But then when you look at what they refer to us as, because they obviously are saying everybody else is wrong.
Yeah.
We're right. You're worshiping on Sunday, and it's a sign of the mark of the beast.
Yeah, and another claim that they like to repeat a lot is the claim that Constantine and the Roman Catholic Church are the ones that changed the day of worship from Saturday to Sunday in order to honor the sun god. They repeat that claim. Historically, you and I, you just did all this research on church history.
Yeah.
Is that true? Did Constantine change the day of worship from Saturday to Sunday?
That was pretty well established in the New Testament.
It was indeed. So, but they make the claim that, oh no, the Christians all worshipped on Saturday on the Sabbath under the law until the point
when worshipped on the first day of the week.
On the first day of the week, which is Sunday. So, I'm sorry, Seventh-day Adventists, you're getting fake history along with your fake doctrine.
But once again, Little Debbie's are still good.
I guess. I'm not a big fan, really.
Well, the zebra snacks, they used to be good. I don't like them as much now. My cosmic brownies are out of this world. I'll
actually tell you what I am guilty of eating that I enjoy, which is the Entenmann donut.
What?
The Entenmann's donut,
Oh, Entenmann's.
Yeah, Entenmann's.
Yeah, I've seen those in the grocery
chocolate-covered donuts.
Yeah, those are okay. I mean, they're,
If I'm going to eat junk food, it's going to be that. It's not going to be Little Debbie. That's just me.
I used to...
now, I don't know if Entenmann has good doctrine or not. I don't know what cult he's in.
I'll tell you this, Little Debbie snacks...
Maybe he is agreement with, the Castile soap guy, Dr. Bronner.
Who knows?
I saw Dr. Bronner the other day, and I thought of you when I was in the store. I saw Dr. Bronner. In Kroger, they sell it in Kroger.
If I had $1 for every time I've been told that, I'd have $1.
Okay.
Now, but if you get Little Debbie snacks, like when I was in seminary, we didn't have any money, and we had small kids, and they were you up all times of night, and you're studying, going to school, you're working, and Little Debbie's, they were my fuel. I mean, they fueled me. I was fueled on Little Debbie's.
I remember eating them back in the 90s as a kid.
And I was chunky.
Okay. I guess there could be a little causation.
That's
there.
why you've seen that thing where
you weren't doing CrossFit yet.
No. But the Little Debbie thing that says it was bound to happen, and it has Big Deborah.
Oh, Big.
I mean, Little Debbie, she eats those snack cakes.
I remember back in the 90s.
Swiss rolls were good,
from time to time, you'd get a Little Debbie in your trick or treat. If you went to the right house,
that was a big deal.
You might get a Little Debbie, like one of those little double, like the zebra snack things that like get one thrown in there.
Yeah, I mean those are.
I'm not saying they're bad.
They're really good.
But I'm gonna take an Entenmann's.
Little Debbie's got a snack for
I'm asking for sponsorship here from Entenmann's.
Well, we're not going to get sponsored by Little Debbie's.
That's for sure. Not after this episode.
I think I have ruined us.
You've ruined that one, so let's go with Entenmann's.
Okay, we'll go with Entenmann's.
And Dr. Bronner. We'll reach out to
them. No. No, Dr. Bronner. No. Well, Paul, you got anything else? We kind of really wanted to address the soul sleep, and we do have the thing with the Sunday worship and
we could talk about. So for me, the biggest problem out of all this stuff is the legalism, the investigative judgment.
Which is still ongoing.
It's like I said,
You almost like heaven, CSI. It's like,
yeah,
whoa.
they'll talk out of both sides of their mouth. They'll say, yes, we believe in salvation by faith alone. It's not by works. That's what they'll claim. But then right at the very same time, they'll hold on to this doctrine of investigative judgment, which is works-based under the law.
List and he's checking it twice.
Yeah, so it's just not, that's what gets Christians confused, is that they'll read these statements where they've said, we believe in salvation by grace alone through faith alone, and then they'll be convinced into thinking it's not a cult.
Okay, we get an email from somebody who is Seventh-day Adventist, and they say, I want the irrepressible Paul Price in a debate tomorrow. Are you down for it?
I don't know about the timing on it, but yeah, I'll be down for it. We can contact Donnie over at
anytime, any place.
Not any time or any place.
What if whoever wins the debate gets like a case of Little Debbie's?
I still would rather have the Entenmann's. Oh. But how about if I win, I get Entenmann's, and if they win, they get Little Debbie's?
I think it's a great wager.
Yeah. But I would take it over to Standing for Truth with Donnie. That's where I'd have it.
Okay, so
I'll throw
there's
down
a standing invitation with Little Debbie's or Entenmann's.
Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, but yeah. So to me, that investigative judgment is by far the biggest problem in their doctrine, and it is a false gospel, because you basically have to live up to a standard of the law in order to be deemed worthy of getting saved. The true gospel is you can never be worthy.
Yeah.
We're saved by what Jesus completed on the cross.
Right.
There is no ongoing work of atonement.
And any
the
works
atonement
that are in our lives
finished.
are part of the sanctification process.
That's right.
Of us being conformed to the image of Christ, which is what God's will is for us.
So when Jesus said it is finished, he meant it is finished. There's no more atonement after that.
And just because some lady in 1844 says, there is, and then that there's a guy in the cornfield that says, oh yeah, and here's what it is.
And all of that just to make themselves feel better after getting a false prophecy.
From the great disappointment.
The great disappointment.
And that's not when the Patriots came back in the second half and beat the Falcons. That is not the great disappointment.
Oh, I think that's a different one.
That's the different one. Yeah.
But basically what I would encourage you to do is, anytime you are tempted to join up with a so-called Christian organization who has ever made false prophecies and not repented of them, I would say don't join that group.
Well, they'd have they'd say, well, there's a prophecy that clarifies this prophecy that clarified the one before, and there's one coming tomorrow.
And there's probably one coming tomorrow. No, I don't know if they. That's the other thing, is that I don't know if they would claim that there was anybody else after Ellen G. White. Like, Ellen G. White is their big deal. I don't know that there's anybody that I don't know if they would. It's not like they're Pentecostals, right? I don't think they have prophecy sessions. I've never been to a Seventh-day Adventist church, but I don't think they have prophecy sessions where it's a free-for-all. It's not Pentecostal. I think it's mostly about Ellen G. White.
Yeah.
Which is very cultish. That's a culty kind of thing.
Yeah.
Why Ellen G. White? What made her so special, right? Like, what's the deal with that?
Because she said she was a spokeswoman for God.
Yeah, well, she wasn't, though. She was definitely not. And she also had other weird stuff, like, I believe she talked about life on other planets, aliens, all kinds of crazy stuff. And
wow.
So I would say stay far, far away from the Seventh-day Adventists. They are not just another Christian denomination.
And Little Debbie's are still good snacks.
I'll mention another thing that we should probably talk about real quick, and that is, where are they, since we're getting back to this topic of soul sleep, where are they getting it from? Why are they so latched onto this doctrine of soul sleep? And I think when I've heard them talk about it, they always tend to want to go to one particular book of the Bible to try to justify this doctrine. And that book is Ecclesiastes. And that's probably one of the most dangerous books of the Bible to take out of context.
Yes.
It's very easy to take Ecclesiastes out of context.
Right.
Because what is that book all about?
It's vanity of life.
Vanity of life apart from God.
Right.
And it's not necessarily, it's just like in the book of Job, right? You can go into the book of Job And if you cherry pick something out of the book of Job, you could be reading a falsehood, right?
Yeah, because his friends gave him bad advice.
Yeah, his friends gave him bad advice, and if you went and cherry picked that bad advice and then say, well, the Bible teaches this, and you're picking it out of that bad portion that God rebuked, that's wrong, right? That's terribly out of context.
Right.
And the same thing is true about Ecclesiastes in the sense that the whole book is written from a sort of atheistic, humanistic perspective. Like,
so this is all there is.
If this is all there is,
song, and it didn't satisfy.
Yeah, if this is all there is, then life is futile. All is vanity.
You sound like you say that like you're on a movie or something.
Futile. Yeah. So the whole point of Ecclesiastes is to tell you what it would be like without God. It's not to tell you what it is like.
Yeah.
So when you take passages out of Ecclesiastes and say, see, this shows that there is no conscious existence out of death. No, that is a humanist take on it. This is sort of like put yourself for the sake of argument into that position, and what would it be like? It's in argumentation we call it reductio ad absurdum, or reduction to absurdity.
Okay.
It means, look, this is how absurd it would be without God.
Yeah.
So you can't take Ecclesiastes out of its context of that and then build a doctrine on that. That's what they do. I believe I don't remember the exact verse in Ecclesiastes, but I think there's a verse in Ecclesiastes that just says, when you die, you're gone, and that's all there is to it.
Yeah, but then
Isn't there that verse?
Yeah, I think something like that. But then when you go to chapter 12 and it says, the dust will return to the earth as it was, and the soul will return, the spirit will return to the God who gave it.
Yeah, I think so, but they have a way of getting around that and reinterpreting it.
Of course, they would have to.
They have to, yeah. They just reinterpret spirit to mean like breath in some way, which it isn't. That I mean, there are contexts where it can mean that, from the Greek word and from, I think, the Hebrew word too, ruach maybe.
Yeah, I don't know why. I don't.
But they'll dig in their heels on this, and it's like it's a bizarre doctrine that leaves you with no hope.
You've got to let it go. At some point, you got to say, you know what? We're wrong.
Yeah.
We're wrong, and all this time we've tried to make it out like we're right and everybody else is wrong. But at some point, if they could just say, we're wrong, and these are the doctrines where we are wrong, then there can
be great if they would.
Most cults don't do that.
Most cults never do that. Now, there is a weird example of a cult, a good weird example of a cult.
Church of God?
Yes.
Herbert Armstrong?
Herbert G. Which also, by the way...
Was it G. Armstrong?
I can't remember.
Okay.
That I don't know why I said G.
Herbert Armstrong. I don't know, but you're stuck on G.
I don't know why I said G. I don't know if that's right or not, but Herbert Armstrong's Worldwide Church of God was another offshoot of the Millerite Adventist cult, and that is one of the only examples I can think of, if not the only example I can think of, where cult leaders have admitted their error and repudiated the false doctrine
and came in line.
And then, but even then, you had offshoots out of that that wouldn't accept that. So it's kind of impossible to stamp out a cult once you've created it. It's because the demonic forces in this world that want to promote false teaching are not going to let it die, right? And there's always somebody out there that wants to latch on to some type of false teaching for whatever reason.
Okay, Paul, you're talking to somebody, before we sign off, you're talking to somebody who's in Seventh-day Adventists, and they want to get out, or they want to get a fresh start. What would you say? Here are two things that you need to renounce. You need to repudiate.
Well, most importantly, you need to repudiate the works-based, law-based salvation. We're not under the law.
Right.
Well, this is something I debated. A modern-day cultist trying to start a new cult, Kingdom in Context. I don't know if you remember when I debated that guy, Sean Griffin, who's created his own new cult, which shares some of these doctrines, by the way.
Okay.
I don't know that he shares the soul sleep thing. I'm not sure about that, but definitely the legalism.
Mm-hmm.
And I debated that because it is such an important thing for us to understand as believers, that we are not under the law.
Right.
We are saved by grace alone, through faith alone, in Christ alone. That was the whole point of it. And when you read the book of Galatians and the book of Romans, you can see that Paul took it very seriously.
Yes,
it was not a side issue. It was not something that we can agree to disagree about. It is the gospel. You cannot mess with that.
Right.
So we are not saved by keeping a Saturday Sabbath.
Correct.
The Bible is very clear that the Sabbath was a shadow of things to come. What is the thing to come? In this case, it's Christ, but maybe if you want to get more specific, it's the second coming of Christ and the millennial reign of Christ is kind of what I think the Sabbath was pointing forward to. But it is just a shadow. It's not the thing. And we are not under that law. So if you want to go to church on Saturday, by all means do it. But do not think that you're going to be more right with God for doing that than Christians are who go on Sunday.
Yeah. Can you imagine riding around on being a Seventh-day Adventist, riding around on Sunday, seeing all these people in church thinking, man, that's part of the mark of the beast.
Yeah.
All these people, they're so deceived. You'd have to think that all the people going to church on Sunday, you'd have to think all these people are deceived.
And that's what every cultist thinks, is that they're the only ones that understand the Bible. All the other Christians have it wrong. Yeah. They're all deceived.
That's sad, man.
Yeah.
That's sad. Well, that's our take on Seventh-day Adventists. We hope you've enjoyed listening to this edition of the Uncensored Pilgrims. And we hope you have a great week, and we will see you next time. And we need to let you know that the views that we express on this podcast belong to Marty McLain and Paul Price. They are our views. They do not reflect the views of anyone else. And with that said, we hope you have a great week, and we'll see you next time on the podcast.